Like my new hat? I do. Recently got it from a friend. Anyway, topic of today's video has nothing to do with this hat. But I want to talk about this George Floyd protest and the ensuing riots and the vandalism and the looting. Now, I have this coworker, a young black man, very intelligent, super nice guy, highly motivated. He's homeschooled. He's active. He works hard, and he's a good kid. And yesterday at work, he told me he was a part of the protest that went down the day before here in Sacramento. So this would be not yesterday. Today is Tuesday. So this would have been Sunday night that he participated, that he claims he participated. Now, I'm not going to name names or anything like this, but I want to tell you this story so that you can get a picture of what it's like here in California, here in Sacramento, if you are of a certain demographic in a place of employment and what you can and cannot talk about. Now, when I'm at work, I keep it professional. Yes, I love discussing politics, all the taboo topics, but I keep it professional. So as he was telling me and describing, and the reason the topic came up is because he had a little hand injury where he had to run and tripped and stumbled and wound up landing on some glass and messed his hand up. Ouch. Anyway, he was describing to me that he was part of the group that was blocking traffic on the on-ramp to I-5, and that he was actively participating in blocking traffic. Okay, now at that point I told him, you realize that once you engage in that activity that you're no longer participating in legitimate protest, right? Well, he didn't agree and he got angry. And he said, well, it doesn't matter. You know, we're angry. And I said, well, why are people so angry? I wanted to get to the crux of the issue. And he said, well, because cops keep killing black people all over the place. And I was like, actually, that's not true. Cops kill way fewer black people than they do white people. And of course, he scoffed. Now, I understand if I were in his shoes and I was fed the liberal garbage that he eats up, that most young people eat up, and of course, he's got the passion of youth, then I would probably scoff too. And I said, well, if you go to the crime statistics on the FBI crime stats page or the DOJ's crime stats page, the Department of Justice puts out crime stats every year, as does the FBI, and they're constantly updated. I said, if you go to those sources, and he cut me off right away. He said, no, I don't want to look at that. I've got my friends to rely on for information. So basically, he flat out told me he has zero interest in learning facts. He has zero interest in learning the actual truth of the matter. All that mattered to him was that a black person died at the hands of a white officer, and he and his fellow community, other black people, are angry and they're legitimate in going out and blocking traffic, looting and vandalizing and burning people's businesses down. And I'm telling you, everybody there at my place of work supports the violence. Can you believe that? Am I the only one in this town that does not support the violence, that says, hey, you can't do that? Legitimate protest? Go for it. The second you start throwing bottles, lighting shit on fire, smashing windows, burning police cars, burning people's businesses down, you're no longer a protester. You're a violent thug that needs to be arrested. Now, I know, to a lot of you, especially my older audience, you might be saying, well, God, man, you're sounding like such a statist. I'm sorry. If it's your business getting torched by these protesters, and you heard me say that, you'd be in agreement with me, right? Yes, you know you would. So at that point, I asked him the question. I said, hey, well, let me interject. Before I got to the point where I asked the question about the comparison between the white cop killing that guy and the 10 black people that were killed by other black people in Chicago on the same weekend, an Asian guy at my workplace interjected and said, well, the FBI says that white supremacists are the ones doing the looting and starting the riots. You get that? Now, me being only one of 2 white guys in the workplace, if that wasn't a dig at my race, I don't know what is. Now, yes, I acknowledged that, yes, that's what the media is telling us, and yes, that may be what the FBI is saying. I haven't heard that, but I have heard the media rant on about white supremacy. Apparently, if you're white, you're a white supremacist, and by default, you're racist. So just keep that in mind. Now, I let that slide. Forget, I'm not even going to address that. So when I asked this young man the question of, well, where are the protests for the 10 people that died in Chicago over Memorial Day weekend? And he said, well, that's different. That was gang on gang shooting. That has no relevance to this situation. Well, point taken. I mean, what do you do at that point? You throw up your hands and you turn around and walk away. But before I could do that, my manager, also a white guy, but gay, not straight. Not that that has anything to do with it, but it actually does, because that allows him a voice in support of all the violence, where me being straight and white and me defending legitimate protest and not defending the violence, why, that's bad. I'm racist for that. Okay? So at this point, he interjects and he says, I strongly suggest we avoid political discussions directing it at me. And this young man says, oh, I agree. Less than 5 minutes later, he and my manager are joking about Trump hiding in the bunker and Orange Man bad. And sometimes when protest doesn't work, you gotta get violent to get the message across. So here's the underlying, unspoken, unwritten rules for straight white people in the workplace when it comes to discussing this whole thing. You'd better shut up about it or you're racist. And I'm telling you, just the mere accusation can and will get you fired. It did for me when I worked for another company I'm not going to name. I was accused of being racist for simply stating facts and for requesting that music with the N-word in it not be played, which I had done over and over again for 2 months straight without using the word. I thought to myself, well, people just aren't getting it. They don't understand what I'm requesting here. So I'm going to use the word so that now it's very specific and pointed. And then they'll understand. Boy, that was the wrong thing to do. I got a write-up, and it wasn't long after that that I got fired. I went to 6 different law firms here in Sacramento, California, to try and take this case to civil court. I could do it by myself. It's only $50 to file a civil charge. But if I do it without representation, it's not going to go anywhere. I kid you not when I tell you that I finally, after weeks of hounding these firms, will somebody please look at my case? I finally had a law clerk tell me over the phone, sorry, sir, but the law just doesn't work the same way for us white folks. End of quote. I'm not joking. If you're a straight white male in California and you're employed, you better not talk about the protests or the riot or mention George whatever the hell his name is, Foley or whatever. Because you run the risk of losing your job because you're white and the perception that you might be racist is all it's going to take for everybody to blast you and for you to lose your job. Now, since we have no recourse to the law, what else are we supposed to do except censor ourselves, right? Well, I don't agree with that. And this time, if I lose my job over this, I promise you, I'm going to spend that $50 and take the case to court by myself. And I'm requesting the support of everybody else who understands this situation. I would need your support. I would support you monetarily if I could, but at least I would show up on the street, stand beside you, and say, this man was fired wrongfully. He's not a racist. You have no evidence for it, and you fired him. That is messed up. I think, and this is just my opinion, but I think that we whites, every time this happens, we need to be the ones at the Capitol protesting legitimately, without the violence. Now, of course, I understand the sentiment that says, hey, when you legitimately protest and nothing changes, then it's time to smash some windows, burn a dumpster. It's still wrong. It's not the right way to go about creating change. You still have other options before lighting that dumpster on fire. Namely, getting a petition together, starting a political action committee, right? Getting signatures on a petition and sending them to your state legislature and saying, hey, look, you've got to change the way the law works. It's got to be equal across the board, regardless of race. And you've got to hammer down on these politicians and the lawyers and the law firms who understandably won't defend whites against racism, against slanders, against libel. They'll defend everybody else because supposedly in this country, racism only flows in one direction. Don't buy it for a second. Don't listen to the media. Don't be like this young blood who goes out and participates in illegitimate protest and thinks that it's justified somehow. I feel bad for the kid because when he goes out there, and now there's curfew, I have no doubt that he and his friends on social media are getting together and talking about let's go in and breaking curfew. There's 500 National Guard here. They're serious about enforcing curfew. I would hate to see this kid get arrested or, even worse, suffer violence because he won't cooperate or because he thinks that what he's doing has some legitimacy to it. It doesn't. So I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that he and all his friends are going to be okay and they're going to get out of this and they're going to calm down, right? I kind of wanted to tell him, dude, calm your tits. But no, that and never in the history of calm down has anyone ever calmed down. You feel me? So just something to think about. Just something to think about if you're not a person of color in the workplace. Be very careful about how you go about discussing this because the very real potential for you being fired for the simple accusation of racism thrown at you because you simply don't agree with the looters and the rioters could get you fired. That's a very real potential possibility. So keep that in mind. I hope you all have a great day. If you do like the video, feel free to give it a thumbs up down in the comments section below. Let me know what you think and have a great one.